Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macker, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you on a Sunday night. It's about 7:23. Here, joined by my good friends, my good buddies, Andrew Claudio. Hello, Andrew.
I get first. Hi. How are you, John? I didn't even have my mic ready or anything.
It's okay.
How are you?
I'm okay. My other buddy, Jeremy Cohen. How are you, bud?
Long time no see, John. It's been a minute. Approximately 240 of them or something.
So
Close enough.
Jeremy, I can hear it.
Oh, yes, you can.
Yeah, I feel it. I don't know if my voice is officially there, but I can hear it. Sounds like you're at a Buffalo Bills bar this afternoon.
I saw one of the greatest football games of our time.
I'm so mad I left.
You should not have left because it was so chaotic.
For context,
incredible.
For context, today was our KFS at MSG game. For those who don't know, so the bunch of us, the three of us, Benji, Chris, most of our crew, and a bunch of our patrons went to a suite at the Thunder game today. Afterwards, we did a meetup event at Penn 6 on 31st Street in New York City.
Shout out Penn 6.
Which I was not privy to this. John obviously knew this, that this is a Buffalo Bills bar on Sundays during the NFL season.
The Buffalo Bill Backers is the group's official title. And they have been backing the Buffalo Bills with that bar group for I think the better part of 25 years. So long time.
Well, this was news to me when I walked in and saw a bunch of people from South Toronto watching their football team. And what ended up happening in the actual Buffalo Bills game was they blew a 27-10 lead and lost 33-30 in overtime. And the last 10 minutes of this game were some of the craziest football things. There was a goal line stop that was followed by a goal line fumble by the offense that led to a touchdown by the defense. Then a pick at the end of the game that would have, when they were in field goal range, when you had the chance to tie the game.
And then there was a miss point after attempt where where the Vikings, basically it was like all they had to do after that, if they hit it, was kick a field goal to tie it, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. And then they got stopped, as you said, but then they got the touchdown a play later. It's pure chaos. That's the thing. It's when the Bills did well, it's the loudest thing you will possibly hear. Mm-hmm. And when they don't do well, you can hear a pin drop. I texted you guys in our group chat. It was like leaving that place was like walking through a funeral. That's just how quiet it was.
And I'm so mad I missed it. Also, the Bills are 6-3.
You mean the Jets?
No, the Bills are now 6-3.
Oh, the Bills are also 6-3.
They are. Yeah. And the Jets hold the tiebreaker.
Okay. There you go. So I left early on because I wanted to get home. One, to help my wife with some things that she was kind enough to watch both of our children while I was at that. I guess I'll call it a basketball game. What passed for a basketball game for a while, and then it devolved into something else that I'm not sure was a basketball game. But two, I wanted to start writing about said quasi basketball game. So yeah, I missed a lot of that. I missed the funereal feeling at the end. Although it is funny how you could have a team that is, I think, still probably the odds-on favorite, or maybe not the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, but they're like one of the, 2 or 3 favorites, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And have it feel like a funeral because you lose a really tough game against a team that is a very good team and the whole thing. And that's one way to feel like a funeral. It's not the only way to walk away from a sporting event feeling like you have just attended a funeral. And maybe that's putting a little bit too fine a point on it. And we'll get into the details, obviously. But what happened today as we're talking, so Sunday afternoon at MSG, I'm just going to steal my newsletter title for tomorrow. It felt like the beginning of the end for Tom Thibodeau. And I am very curious to get your reactions, Jeremy. And I want to give you the floor to say whatever you're going to say, because you have been certainly more vocal and more ardent in your criticism of Tom over the last year, especially. and we've had a lot of good back and forth. I'd like to think they're good back and forth discussions about it, right? In which we kind of got at the heart of some of the stuff that went wrong or has gone wrong and how much was his fault and this and that and the other thing. So I'll just open it, and we're going to get into some of the specifics of the game because they reveal a lot of other issues. But I'll just say at the top, if you were someone like me who has always defended Tom here with the Knicks, I think the thing more than anything you fall back on is that, and I've said this in different ways many times, I remember and have internalized the pain of so many basketball games that from the moment they threw the ball up at center court, almost from that exact moment, as a Knicks fan sitting at home watching, you knew they were not going to win this game. Like, and maybe they would trip and stumble their way into a win here and there because the other team was maybe out partying or like someone got hot or whatever. But from a process point of view, from a preparedness point of view, from all of those sorts of things, they just weren't going to compete, or they weren't going to be in the game more often than not against, decent or good teams. And for me, Tom Thibodeau represented and has always represented a departure from that. And that's even last season, as everything went wrong around him. Like, you looked at how the team came out and like they would get these big leads and then they would lose the big leads. But you could at least point to the fact, like, okay, they came out and they got the big lead, right? They're doing something right. Like, something's getting lost in translation here, but there's some good stuff also happening. And then we enter this season, and now the Knicks, after blowing an unconscionable game to the Atlanta Hawks, after barely beating a Sixers team, missing their two best players, taking it down to the wire against Detroit team that might be the worst team in the league, beating a Minnesota team that is perhaps the only team in a worse state of like chaos than the Knicks right now. Giving up a franchise record 3-pointers to the Celtics last weekend. And then what am I forgetting? Getting lambasted by the Brooklyn Nets a week or so removed from their own state of turmoil by 27 points in Brooklyn. They give up 145 points today to the Oklahoma City Thunder, a decent Thunder team. They're fine. They're a decent team. They're not bad. They have a star, emerging superstar, if you want to call them that. But this is the most points this franchise has given up in 43 years. So I say all of that, and I'm sorry I'm going on for a while. I promise I'm going to turn over to you in a moment. Are we at the point where the thing that Tom is supposed to bring, the thing that Tom is supposed to represent, that level of competence, that level of, okay, at least we know what we're going to get. It might not work out in the end, but we know they're going to come out and they're going to be ready to play, and they're going to have a game plan that if they execute the game plan, they will have a chance to win the game in the end against pretty much any opponent. Are we past that? And I'm not even talking about all the rotation stuff and all, and yes, some of this is like overlapping, but like, are we past that? And even as I say that, I'm like, well, they're not a team that's clearly dogging it, and like there's still effort there. But then, you know what, Jeremy? To me, if they're going out there and you watch a team like today go out and like, I don't know, did you think they were outright dogging it? I didn't think they were dogging it. Did you?
No, I didn't think they were dogging it.
Okay, I don't think they've been dogging it. If you have a team that's going out there and giving some modicum of effort, and they're not really dogging it, with the exception of maybe one guy who I'm sure we'll get to because we always do, not really dogging it on defense. And I don't think they've been dogging it lately. And you still give up 145 points, and you still get blown out by the Nets, and you still give up this lead to the Hawks, and and all of this shit. Is that not worse potentially than having a coach who has a team that goes out there and just like fucks around and doesn't even try? And that's kind of at the point where I'm at. Is this a coach that, in a way, I don't want to say, is it too harsh to say like he's abandoned this team? No, he hasn't abandoned this team, but with whatever game plan that they had today, they didn't have a chance, and I know Oklahoma City hit, 55% from three, and they're a terrible 3-point shooting team. I don't care. I don't care. You don't give up 145 points and turn around and be like, well, the other team hit some shots and, we didn't get some bounces in. Come on. Enough. And that's where I'm at. I don't even know what else I have to say about Tom, so I'll turn it over to you.
I had a lot of fun in the game regardless. It's a great game. It's awesome to see so many people. The way I felt as I was watching this, it didn't feel like a funeral, but it kind of felt like a celebration of life in the sense of it wasn't mourning Tibbs. It was just like, I was talking with some people about how fondly the first season was. And we can talk about the lasting impact of, if the Knicks weren't good that year, what happens these next few years, how that changes the trajectory or not. But purely from a basketball and enjoyment standpoint, I know you guys have talked about this too. I loved that season, and it was escapism from a year of chaos, and it was great. It also set in motion where we're at right now. And it was always going to come to this with Tibbs. It was just a matter of when. What I worry about is you listed all these different games. We are 13 games in, and I feel like you can count on more than one hand the amount of games that either were just egregious or gave us some sort of agita. Like even the shouldn't say the easiest game, right? But the Pistons
let's go through
were without Cade, and it was still this close to the point where why are we sweating when this is happening? Here's the thing. There wasn't a moment during this Pistons game where I felt they're going to blow it. I genuinely didn't think that, but it got so close to the point where I was schwitzing a little because how could you not? And the fact that, again, you can count on one hand or more than one hand, it's spilling to the second one about those games. The Hornets game, it was a lot of fun. They also probably shouldn't have. They played well at the beginning of the season, and they've tapered off. Certainly, I think eight losses in a row that the Hornets have had. Even still, it feels like the only team they took advantage of them, as you were saying, was the Timberwolves, which is a team that is in a far worse situation than the Knicks are right now. And the fact that there are a million ways to die in the West, maybe it's a million ways to die in the East, because that's just how it feels with this team. And there are three issues that I see. It's Tibbs, it's Randle's impact, and it's Fournier's impact. And with Fournier, you can mitigate it by just not really playing him. You don't have to play him. The contract's not going anywhere. Like, it's not like if you play him more or less, it really does much. Look at how he performed today. He was just downright terrible. He is a man who seems like he doesn't have confidence in who he is. And I get it, because listen, he signed that contract, right? Tibbs didn't sign on the contract. He's here. He came in as a secondary or tertiary scorer, someone who could do some added stuff, get in playmaking. That's not really what his role became. It became much more, let me make you like Reggie Bullock on the offensive end. Not Reggie Bullock, but closer to him. And it just feels like he's right. And it feels like he has zapped. It feels like his joy has been zapped. He's not playing out there like the NBA player that he is. I understand that the competition in the NBA is a little bit different than what this summer was with what was it, the European Championships? Was it? Yeah. Right. He was a good player then. He did well. And then he comes here and it almost feels like he doesn't want to be here and he can't move because of how he's playing and because of the contract situation and the front office. You don't have to play him. That's one. Number two, Randle. You're going to play him. He's not going to not play. But at least if you trimmed his minutes in a way that made you feel like you are getting minutes for Obi Toppin, that you're mitigating other areas of what your team is, you can do more with it. Like if you look at this team, cleaning the glass, which screens out garbage time, there have been 1,195 possessions for the Knicks. And when you factor in offense and defense, the difference between the two, the Knicks are in the 37th percentile. If you look at the stats, this is including the Thunder game. If you look at the stats with Julius and Evan off the floor, there are 227 possessions. And instead of being in the 37th percentile, they are in the 75th percentile. That's double the amount in terms of percentile. Yeah. You're not going to be able to necessarily move either of them right now, right? But you can at least mitigate it. Tibbs. There's no half pregnant here. You either have Tibbs or you don't. If the front office starts saying, hey, Tibbs, we want you to play these guys more, then you're basically saying to Tibbs, we think you're not doing a great enough job and we don't trust you. And if Tibbs is from that perspective, it's like, if you don't trust me, why am I still here? And that then goes to the issue. What's the easiest thing to do right now? It's to replace the coach. It's not to move players on November 14th, which is when people would be listening to this. It's not something that really happens. And by the way, it's less about the Knicks dogging it. I just wonder who on this team really wants to play for him. Like, the player who should most be in his corner is Derrick Rose, who outright said, I don't really know what my role is this year. That if Derrick Rose is saying that, God knows what the other players are like. Emmanuel Quickley, Ian Begley reported this week that Quickley wanted, that their team's interested in a trade. And in my mind, I'm thinking, who benefits from this leak? It's not the Knicks, unless they're really shopping him. And I don't see why this news would come out in early November. It's not necessarily other teams that are, it could be other teams going to Ian and saying, hey, and Ian reporting, I've learned that other teams like it, possibly. But to me, it felt like this is very, very coincidentally timed with the idea that Quickley isn't getting the playing time he wants, and that he's been a soldier through all of this. And if I'm Quickley, I'm thinking, why am I really motivated? Like, I'm motivated because I'm a basketball player. I want to do well at my job. I love this. I work hard. But extrinsically, what do you get if you work hard? Because what Tibbs has basically said is, Quick, you could work as hard as you can. You're not leaving the bench. Like, I'll close with you, but I like you.
You're never going to start for me.
Right. And I struggle with that because Cam has certainly been a good player. We've seen, especially in the defense end, we've seen positivity there. It's been good. But like when Fournier was out there and it was egregious and maybe Cam wasn't the first option, why not try it? It just, and the Strickland talked about this, where there's barely been any IQ, Reddish, RJ minutes. Like, the personnel is there. It's why I get frustrated at the idea in general that like the Knicks don't have the personnel to be an average team. They do. They don't have the coach who is creative enough to get them into that position where you feel like, hey, he's trying to do something here. Like, you don't need 48 minutes of rim protection when the largest player on the Thunder is like 6'8", 6'9". It does not compute.
I'll push back for just a little bit there, in that rather than, we know that in the league as it is right now, where there are, I don't know, 18, 19, 20, I think they're all confused now because like Utah's good and like Minnesota stinks. About 2/3 of the league is good, right? They're going for it. Like they're pretty legit. I don't know that I could sit here and be like, the Knicks have the personnel to be an average team. If your definition of average is between 39 and 43 wins, what I will say is I certainly cannot sit here and say that I know for a fact that they do not have the personnel. I don't know if that made any sense. Like there are too many unanswered questions at this point with these players that have been here for almost all of them, with the exception of Jalen Brunson, who we know exactly what he is, and Cam Reddish, who came in the middle of last season, and Grimes. I'll say Grimes as well, but Grimes hasn't even been there. These guys have been here for over 2 years. And the fact that we are still asking these questions, and the fact that, like, yes, that's one of probably a dozen examples. Emmanuel Quickley never getting a look with the starters. And that stuff is real. And the notion of Tibbs starting to lose, I hate to say it, but lose the team or lose that grasp. Like the way he coaches, you have to have, you said it before, there's no half pregnant. If you're going to execute a Tibbs scheme properly, it has to be to perfection. That's what he banks on. That's the whole way. The we're going to drop back and we're going to, it's all perfectly. It has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, it's going to look like it looked like today, which is, my goodness, abysmal. The only other thing, what you're going to say, and then, the only other thing I was going to say, and I don't have an answer to this, and I don't know that you have an answer to this. I don't think there is an answer to this, is trying to disentangle the Julius Randle of it all from the Thibodeau of it all, to me, continues to be the most challenging thing, because and I don't even know what more I could say about it in confidence other than that, because it seems like these two things are joined at the hip, but also that they have their own separate angles. And that's the only other thing I just wanted to throw in before we move on.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I keep going back to what Alan Hahn said when the Knicks were trying to trade up for Ivy, which is that no one could really get the best grasp on what a lot of these young players' values were. And it came because they weren't playing. Now, the front office added other talent around them, and that talent played ahead of them and played in roles where maybe the younger players should have gotten more experience and more exposure. And that's on the front office. But it's on Tibbs to also determine when things are working, when they're not, and when they're not working, how they can improve. And yes, he is not responsible for Julius Randle being signed to the contract that has him here. He is responsible for the fact that Obi Toppin, who is by this point a legitimately good 3-point shooter, helps with spacing, can do more. At least we hope he can do more. We don't even necessarily know, because of the fact that it feels like he just gets the leftovers. And if a player is as negative, and I don't necessarily mean disposition wise, I mean it. If you look at a lot, yes, Randle's box score, if you're just taking a quick look, there's some good stuff in there. If you look at especially the defensive end of it, which we know drives Tibbs crazy because he's a defensive coach, especially in that Brooklyn game, even if the Boston game, if he's the reason why so much, and today, why all these screens aren't working, switches are a nightmare, don't keep him in there.
Jeremy, they're attacking him.
Of course they
opened the third quarter with they were hunting Julius Randle on defense, and they were going right at him because they knew they would beat him off the dribble. And if some Nick came over to help because he was getting beat off the dribble, that Julius Randle wasn't about to go make the next rotation to cover up for whoever left their man to come and get the guy that was driving on him. This is in every team's game plan at this point, which is why again, I have trouble disentangling these two, because it's, as you've said many times, it's $100 million invested in this player. You're not going to put this player on the bench. You're going to play this player 20 something minutes, and with the roster you have, those minutes are going to probably most of them are going to come at the 4, as they probably should, because you can't protect their. It's just he becomes a maddening player to try to game plan around and with. And so from that perspective, and the fact that they have all the money tied up in him, I have the most sympathy for Tibbs, and at the same time, it's also my greatest criticism for the reasons that you just stated. Well,
ultimately, talent wins out, and I'm sure a lot of people are listening to that and thinking talent, Julius Randle, but it's just players in general. When you're signed to a larger contract, when you have an integral role, whether you're a good player or not, you are probably going, it's easier to get rid of the coach when things aren't working than it is to get rid of the player. And that is unfortunately something that Tibbs has to grapple with. Is it ideal? Maybe not. I think there's a world in which maybe both should not be here, and we can see how that goes. But I still wonder, is the disconnect between Randle and Tibbs about the relationship between the two of them? Because things were really good the first year where Randle's looking like a superstar and Tibbs is the honeymoon phase and everything. And then it just grows apart. They grow apart. And then we get to this point. And I don't know. I think there's something to be said. And I'm saying it's almost like I'm writing an obituary for someone who isn't, who's not gone.
My support.
Right. But people are going to say, when Tibbs is what feels like going to be fired at some point, why is it the Knicks didn't just go into this season with Johnny Bryant or another coach? Why is it they didn't make the change in the beginning?
We know why.
Well, why are you saying why?
I think you said it. You're only guaranteed to get one coach firing.
Yes, you are. If you can push it into this season, then what you say is, look, we had to turn to an interim. It didn't work out. But the next coach, whether we like that guy who was the interim coach or a new guy, that's the guy we're sticking to. And then unless things are completely a nightmare, you get a year out of it. They're stretching it. They're stretching their time. And there's nothing. I'm with you, though, John, in that I do agree. If Tibbs isn't here, it's not going to change the personnel, right? It's not like this team is going to be so much better, but we just don't know. But it's not like they're going to make this jump from, hey, this is not going well to this is a superstar team. It's somewhere in the middle, probably closer to the other end of it, which is this is an average team that should be playing like an average team. And the record itself is misleading because they're 6-7, where every week
it's very deceiving record.
It's very it's consistent with how you would have felt, how I felt. But when you look at the games themselves, yes, you're right. It's completely misleading.
We're about to get a different animal, and we'll go through the upcoming schedule. We did it before at the bar. We'll go through it for
and then we drank.
And then we drank.
Yeah.
Two things, and then I want to. We're probably honestly we might be burying the elephant in the room, or not the elephant. Might be burying the lead. With some fourth quarter decisions that he made, which kind of tie into this as well. I want to say one more thing on Randle. As has been said by many times, I think Obi said it really well at the end of last season. It's the most basic offense in basketball. It's just read and react. That is the offense. There is no other offense. It's read and react. And it's about how do you put guys in initial advantage situations where they can get the second guy to the ball and then they make the proper reaction. That's all it is. Julius Randle this season is a top 10 percentile usage player. He's in the 92nd percentile for usage for forwards. I see Cleaning the Glass has reclassified him. That's interesting. And he's above the median in efficiency. Now I'm looking at this. This is only through 12 games. Maybe this went down a little bit, but 53rd percentile for forwards in efficiency, 115 points per 100 possessions. If you're in the top 10% for usage and you're above the median for efficiency on offense, like you're doing fine, right? It's not great. Not great, not all NBA, not all star, but like you're fine. Tibbs sticks with Randle, not because, Randle has fucking naked pictures of him or anything. It's because that's the offense. And Randle still, now along with Brunson, it used to be just Randle, but now Randle and Brunson are the guys he relies on the most to be able to get two on the ball and then make the reaction. Now, Randle has made more decisions, the proper decisions this year, but that is the offense. There is no pivot. There is no pivot to something like, hey, let's figure out ways where we can try to get a guy like Obi Toppin in space more, and yes, they have been running and there's different things. And I don't know that there is an answer, but when we talk about Tibbs and Randle, it's tough. Whenever we say more accountability, baked into that is the fact that this is his offense. And without Randle there, which is why I believe that even if they had a trade today to just dump for Julius Randle's contract, I don't know that they would make that trade. So again, that's partially a Tibbs thing. That's partially a Randle thing. Randle, of course, was in there for the fourth quarter against Oklahoma City. Two players who did not touch the court in the fourth quarter were RJ Barrett and Jalen Brunson. And that to me, Jeremy, is a massive deal. Both of those guys. And there have been some games over the course of his 3 years here where RJ hasn't finished. Last 2 years under Tibbs. There's been a few. I feel like I could probably count them on one hand. Maybe I might need to go to a second hand. And now Brunson, who has been unequivocally their best player, like for both of those players to finish the game on the bench felt to me like it reeked of a little bit of desperation. And also like, if you finish the game with those two players on the bench, you've either like your core has been shaken or potentially he's like so confident that he feels like he doesn't have to worry about shaking the core. Like you could go in either direction there, but either way, that was to me unnerving.
I think someone at the event said it was quiet quitting. And it's like, all right, yeah, I can't necessarily disagree with that. Yeah, it was mind boggling. And I think it's a very fascinating how he's going about this because I don't know who's even in his corner.
I don't know either.
I don't get it. This is someone who has said in the past, the reason I play my stars is because, and I play them heavy minutes, is because if the other team's playing their stars 5 more minutes than mine, we're going to lose. And I fight for every single game. right? Like we've seen him put starters back into the lineup in games that never should have been close. It's how RJ Barrett got hurt last year when that Nuggets game was never a winnable game. And yet he put him back in there for, I don't know why, but he did. That's what he did. Somehow he gave up on this game, but he said he wants to try something different with this, but it feels like he never wants to try something different that makes sense from the fans' perspective, right? Look, I don't watch the film 3 times. I'm not paid to coach the team. So from the peanut gallery, what I see is, okay, you're trying things. There are things aren't necessarily going to work. And they're not things that you're going to try to do long-term, right? Like we're not going to see Randle and Fournier with no Brunson or Barrett on the court very much. And if we are, it's probably because it was already a loss in a situation like this. Your calling card is defense and you give up 145 points. I think that one thing we were discussing at the game was usually what happens is the Knicks take advantage of teams that come in, they have late nights, they're partying, and then early games, they're well rested and they beat them. It doesn't happen anymore. And I think it probably doesn't happen because NBA players now are just different from the NBA players and, the aughts or the 90s. Right? You're not seeing these players going to clubs a lot, most likely. They're probably playing video games. They're probably hanging out and there's just a different generational style. Not to say they don't go out and they don't do things, just different. I think Zion said 80% of the league watches anime, but no one will admit it because they don't want to seem uncool for watching anime. But if you like anime, you like anime. I just think there's a different type of players here. And what used to be an advantage for the Knicks being in this city, it's not. Like Tibbs apparently had the players come in early and work through something. And it worked offensively for the first quarter. 48 minutes, 48 points.
48 points.
First quarter.
That's best first quarter in team history.
Yep. And it never, ever felt close. It never felt like they would run away with this.
No.
Because the Thunder were breathing down their necks. And then it just went in completely opposite directions.
It was defense optional. It was a defense optional game. And just to be clear, Barrett had a terrible first half.
Yes.
He was not good on offense. Defense, I thought he was okay. I thought he had some nice possessions against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And Brunson was very good on offense, but was part of the problem on the defensive end. But then again, who wasn't? I mean, other than Cam Reddish, who had some nice moments. I thought Emmanuel Quickly also. I thought Cam had a very nice game. Quickly also. We'll get to those in game ball. But yeah, I don't know, man. I will do the predictions at the end, but we should. I mean, I think it's relevant to just real quick go through what's coming up as we're having this conversation. Mm-hmm. Starting Tuesday at Utah, then back to back at Denver, Friday at Golden State, Sunday at Phoenix. You have to laugh. Monday at Oklahoma City, who just beat them today, and then Friday back home, Portland in their own building. So they get Thanksgiving and they get a 3-day break. Friday home Portland, Sunday home Memphis. Then there's a little bit of a reprieve. You would think they go to Detroit, and then the next 4 after that: Milwaukee home, Dallas at home, Cleveland at home, Atlanta at home. There is a very good chance, barring some key players getting injured for some of those teams or sitting out or whatever, that the Knicks will be underdogs in 11 of their next 12 games. In fact, it would be a considerable surprise if they were not underdogs in any of those 11. I would imagine they'll probably be favored at Detroit, although who knows at this point. That's the next 12. That's the next 12 games. That's what it is. That gets us to December 7th. Game 25 would be that game in Atlanta. And then after that, there's a stretch where you figure they could make some hay. Sitting here right now, is there any... I can't say with confidence that Tibbs is going to be the one still coaching the team at that point.
Can't say it either. We were discussing this too. It's it almost feels like, what is the date that works to fire Tibbs if you're the front office? Not if. Because the thing is as time keeps going, you basically give Tibbs more of a chance, right? The thing that pisses me off so much about this game was knowing how tough this schedule is. You needed these types of games. You had to win these games, have them in your back pocket so that when you do lose, it's all right. Well, that sucks. We lost, but at least we had these games before. And again, we could look through, we talked about it, but the 6 wins that the Knicks had, right? They're primarily against teams under 500 or missing their best player/players. And again, they won those games. Kudos to them. They had to do it, and they did. But it hasn't felt easy. There was a fight against the Grizzlies in the second half. And then when you look through the list, it's just like, what was it that really felt like, I love the effort that was put through? It's not dogging it, so to speak. It's just matching up against a team and feeling like the Knicks actually had a legitimate chance to win this game. And it's the Atlanta game for the first 18 or so minutes. And then since then, like, again, they came back and they beat Philly, and that was great. I shudder to think what would have happened if the second or the runner up in the MVP category were playing, if the $68 million man that they signed and James Harden were there, but they still came away with the win, which is important as the Knicks try to keep winning. But a game like today, the idea of going in 7-6 to a brutal 5-game
West Coast road trip. Yeah.
And then to come back and then, you have Thanksgiving. Like, to me, if the Knicks weren't playing Memphis and Milwaukee and Dallas and Cleveland, Detroit sprinkled in there too, but not as much of a threat. If that were the case, if they weren't playing those teams, I would have thought, isn't the most Knicks thing possible to do a Friday night firing after the Blazers game where it's like a news dump, right? It goes into the weekend cycle. You don't have to worry, but I don't think that they would let whoever would take over for him in a position where they feel like they will fail. And if you go to the 25 game mark, you say, we gave him a quarter of the season, right? Last year, it didn't go well. It just didn't. We're at the point where we need a spark, and that would be the spark. But at the certain point, it's like, you then look at that schedule. We just did game 13. So if we're at game 25, 12 games from now, let's say generously, they go 4-8, right? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying, let's give them that's the thing.
That's very generous.
Right. So you're at 10-15.
Yeah.
Not too bad because you're still in play-in territory. It's early. You can figure it out.
I don't think that does it.
But then, right. What happens if it's 2-10 instead? And we're looking at 8-17.
But that's the difference. That's the difference. And for me, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I'm already thinking of, what is there a pivot? Is there an organizational pivot to the point where if they look around, if they get to that 25 game mark and they are, again, just to put a number out there, if they are 8 and what would it be? 8-17? Yeah. 8-17. They're 8-17 and they're 4th or 5th or 6th in the lottery odds at that point. Is there at least, I would hope at that point, there's at least a team meeting about a potential change. Just like, get everybody on the phone. Be like, hey guys, so there's this guy, Victor something or other. Apparently can do some things on the court. Like, has anybody seen tape of this guy? Have that meeting if that's where they're at after 25 games. And there's an argument that if they're 2 or 3 wins more than that, does that mean you shouldn't have that meeting? And that gets into a whole other host of things. All right. I don't have anything else I want to say.
I'll add one more thing. I just don't see them pivoting in that direction.
I don't either.
Right. Because their whole offseason was, we want to get better as a team. And the fascinating thing is, I think you and I were discussing this there. It's so funny how the 2 best players on this team this year, especially when you look at more cleaning the glass focus, it's Isaiah Hartenstein and it's Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
And this was coming off of a year prior.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
We're looking at a free agency class where it wasn't good. Didn't work out. I'm the first person to say I loved that offseason when it happened. I was totally wrong about it. And now you see them getting out of a lot of it, right? They didn't move Burks, Noel, and Kemba just to move them. They moved it and then knew they were getting whether it was wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or, hey, here's the incriminating smoking gun text of Jalen want to play in New York ? From Leon Rose. Probably wasn't that, but like you have to, I think they're trending in the right direction. The bones of this house are pretty good. It's very easy for fans in general to look at a lot of the things that are going wrong and hone in on them. And to be honest, the things that are going wrong are completely valid. If you have gripes about how this team is being run, there's a very good chance that you're in the right. And I won't push back too hard. It depends on the argument, but I think they're legitimate concerns. But I do think the positive does get buried here. The issue is that it's very easy to say flexibility without having anything in mind, right? Like, yeah, the picks are valuable. What are the picks going to do for me today? What are the picks going to do for me tomorrow when I don't even know what player they would even get? It's really tough. They're ready. It's just, what are they ready for? And I think it's why, this people want the Knicks to win, obviously. At least Knicks fans want the Knicks to win, but in the long term. And I'm not suggesting, hey, tank, because I don't really know how you could do that. They're putting right now a decently mediocre product on the floor anyway, where they're trending in the downward direction. But it's the sort of thing where if their strongest point is building through the draft and you want more bites of that apple, you don't need to tank for it, because the irony is that the Knicks got their asses handed to them by a Thunder team whose best player, number one, wasn't even drafted by them.
I know.
And number two was taken 12th overall. So
yeah,
tanking is important if you view it as important, but it really depends on the situation, because you can still find a great amount of talent in that range. And that's why, again, I still was fine with the Knicks trading out of 11. Still going to be the case. We'll see how that holds up in the future. It could very easily be that there was like Atari Eason type who's just so good that, hey man, the Knicks should have really taken him. Jalen Williams, like, why did they trade out of that spot? We could probably do that for one player or another. Until then, though, it feels like the best way to win these fans over is, okay, look, yes, we do want a star in the building. We need to prep for that, but we're going to try to focus inward. We're going to look in-house. We're going to lean on our strengths, which is drafting and development. Because as bad as this is with Tibbs, I do honestly believe that he has played a productive role in developing these players.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just,
I completely agree with that.
He has gotten to the point where that's not good enough.
But so the only thing I'll push back, and then we'll get to game balls and detention. Is it's tough for me to say that I'm happy with and comfortable with the bones of the team for two reasons. One, if Jalen Brunson isn't on this team, and granted, the front office went out and signed him, and he is on the team, and they get credit for that, and he's here. So it's not like we have to imagine a world where he isn't here, because he's here. That said, if he was not here, do they have a win? Do they have 2 wins? I'll say 2. I feel comfortable saying 2.
Yeah, he is here. I know what you're saying.
He's here. He's here. I feel comfortable saying that they would have 2 wins. And Hartenstein's been very good too, to your point. The other part of it, why I have some trouble with saying with the bones of the team are fine, is because Julius Randle is here. Hashtag he here. Is that supposed to be Julius or Brunson?
It was Brunson, but it works out even more perfect with Julius, right?
Hashtag he here. Yeah, here. He's still here, and he not going anywhere. I don't know how, because I am of the belief at this point that he's just not a player you win with in the NBA unless he is playing a very particular role on a very particular roster. And that is probably going to be, and I've said it a few times, 20, 25 minutes off the game, bench units, where, you know, he could be insulated to the extent that anyone could be insulated if they're not a really good defensive player. And even then, you know, like it's kind of an archaic offense when you run it through him, because he goes about it the way he goes about it. And he's tried to embrace some of the stuff that they want him to do. And he has, to a certain extent. when he's here and he's making the money and he seems like, and that's the thing I really struggle with is Tiv gets fired tomorrow. Do we really think that Randle's minutes usage are going to go way down, or his role or how he goes about his business on this team is going to change considerably under Johnny Bryant? Maybe he will. And if they do, I'll be the first person to say I was wrong. I'm a little suspicious that that's going to be the case. And then the only thing as far as tanking and drafting and developing, if you're so good at drafting and developing, why not try to do it with a better pick? It's, like,
oh yeah, of course you mitigate how far you fall in that case. And yes, because, then unless the Knicks jump in the lottery, they are going to continue to try to move up. They've done it all 3 years that Leon Rose has been here. They've tried moving up as far as they possibly can. But yes, it's easier to move up when you're already higher up to begin with. Yes, which then comes in. Yes,
and I hear you. And the two things tie together, because as great as Brunson is, that's also a argument for they have super easy pivot into a tank, which is to shut Jalen Brunson down. And like, I know that's not something that he wants, surely. I'm sure that's not something that they want. They're probably not even thinking about it. I'm sure they're not thinking about it. I'm sure this is
not before game 14. Yeah.
No, I'm
just saying down the line.
No, I am saying like a game 40 or 50 type of move, like let him make his all-star run like the Thunder did with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander last year. And then he didn't play for however many of the last, number of games. Like, my point is, I think your point about the bones being good was exemplified today. And this is a good transition to game balls, because there are good young players on this team that you want to see more of, and you want to continue to explore their ceilings. But I can't say anything more about that because you give out the first game ball because reasons.
I guess I'll go with, it's recency bias, but it was really great to see Cam. Really great to see him, but he'll be my nominee because as Andrew's got some other people and other folks listed here. So I'm going to go with our KFS patron / community option that he has picked. That's mine. Pod's changed my life. I love it. Love seeing people. Loved the fact that we were able to do this today. So honestly, just if I were watching this game at home, be miserable. But I had such a good time today that it was almost like, yeah, this sucks, but there's a communal aspect to it. We were sitting Shiva in Lounge 309, and great. so I'm cool with that. So I'm gonna go with them and Cam as a player, recency bias, and he has these offensive games once every however many games, but it was worth it. He was productive. It was important. So I guess I'll go with him, but patrons it is.
So you're going with the patrons?
Oh, I'm going with the patrons, baby.
Okay. Shout out to all of our patrons
and just community, listeners, and
there were non-patrons there. Yeah. So
yes,
all the entire community.
The whole KFS community. If you're listening to this podcast, you're part of the community, whether you're at the game or not. And yeah, shout out to MSG Events, who helped set this up. Penn 6 for hosting us afterward. And all of those things. I'm going to give it to Cam Reddish. And that is a little bit of recency bias. Cam how many other games were there this week? There were 3 other games this week, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did not have great shooting nights. He was 0 of 7 against Brooklyn. Was not great on from the field. In Minnesota, he was 2 of 7, and against Detroit, he was 2 of 6. The reason why I have no issue giving him the game ball is because his defense, I think, even when his offense has not been great, has been really good. And he was to me, even more than Quickly, because I think Quickly had some moments that were not so great defensively today against the Thunder. Cam's defensive performance today against the Thunder, I think, it stood out to me for all of the right reasons. He finished this game today with his career high as a Knick, 26 points on 17 shots. He also chipped in 4 steals, a block, 2 assists. Hey, Cam, way to get in the assist column. At 3 rebounds as well. Fred said it to you at the end of the week, Andrew. The Knicks have to continue to see what they have in Cam Reddish. It's games like this that remind you why, okay, even though he'll have a game or 2 games after this where it's like, man, Cam, what are you doing with these shots? This is still a young-ish player. There's still upside here. And where they are at as a franchise, they are in no position to turn their noses up at the potential that they may have something here. I don't know what that something is. It's probably not the something that the Hawks thought they were getting when they drafted him, but there's still something here. So
he had some of those moments today, and yet still I was like fine with the minutes he played. And I was at the end of the day okay with his aggressiveness. And you just heard the box score, he had a bounce back game after 2 poor ones, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The fifth candidate for Game Ball, by the way, is one Mr. Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. We will save our thoughts for next week because Jeremy hasn't seen it yet. There's a reason he's in the Game Ball category instead of Detention, though. 2 out of 3 so far, I think, enjoy the movie.
Agree on that. Yes. It was very good. Okay, so that means I get to give Detention. So our candidates that Andrew Claudio has listed here: Tom Thibodeau, Julius Randle, Evan Fournier, Derrick Rose, or the Dallas Cowboys. I have no idea what the Dallas Cowboys
I'll do it because Jeremy will enjoy this. The Cowboys lost in overtime today. Yeah. So they are now the 3rd place Dallas Cowboys. And because the Giants won, the Giants are now the 2nd place New York Giants.
Very nice. I'll take it.
There you go.
I'm not putting the Dallas Cowboys in detention.
They're already there. Whoever you're putting in detention is already in there with the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
Exactly.
I'm never going to put Derrick Rose in detention. Something is off with Derrick Rose. It's getting a little sad, actually. He was very bad on defense today, and his offense is like the numbers are still okay, but like you just watch him and there's something not quite there. I'm still not putting him in detention. Evan Fournier, I've already put in detention once. That's enough for now. So it comes down to Tom and Julius for me. Oh boy. They really are tied together. Yeah. I'm gonna go against type. I'll put Tibbs in detention. 145 points. To be there and witness what can only be described at points in time in this game as a layup line. Well, there was no adjustment as far as schematically. He played a traditional center for all 48 minutes of this game and just stay stuck in drop coverage and like never tried Obi and Randle together. We talked about the 4th quarter decisions and all of these things. And it's like whether the other things he could have gone to would have worked or not. Like there can't be anything worse than giving up the most points your franchise has given up in 43 years. It can't get worse than that. It cannot. So yeah, Tibbs, you're in detention.
Makes my life a little bit easier because there's really one option as a result, which is therefore Julius Randle. Again, it's just like, if you're not watching the games, it's easy to be like, I don't understand why Julius is getting piled on here. It doesn't make sense. He's making shots. He's doing a big reason why the defense is just terrible is because Julius Randle. Yep. And he is who he is, like at this point, unless someone comes in and completely changes who he is and his style and force that the offense plays through him differently, it's not going to change. And I think as someone who had a 2nd All-NBA season, it's hard to go from that to, you're always going to think, I was that guy. I was that dude. I was him. How am I now not him anymore?
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell me that I can't do that because I know I can do that, right? I've done it. Let me do it again. And the evidence, unfortunately, just points in the direction of, yeah, you did do it. You did it once. Since then, it's just not been effective. It hasn't been efficient. And I in some ways, I feel for him because of the fact that he didn't ask to be ahead of Obi Toppin in the pecking order.
No.
He received a contract offer and he signed it. And I would have signed that extension too if I were him, especially knowing what we know now. And yet it just isn't working. And I think it would be great to see Tibbs coaching this team without Julius Randle.
I'd be very curious. You just removed him from the equation.
Yeah, I just don't think we'll get the opportunity to really know.
Well, and that's why, again, they could fire the coach tomorrow. It will not change my opinion really very much at all about, barring something unforeseen. But the way I think it would go after that firing, it would not change my opinion very much about the front office or the general direction of where the team is at right now. What would change my opinion about those things is if they made a commitment to move on from this player who quite clearly is, you're stuck in a certain place as long as he's on this roster. And again, I'm not saying he's not at fault. I'm not even saying let me be very clear. He's been okay on offense. He's been good on offense with the amount of usage and the shots that he's taking, how much he's getting to the line. He got to the line a bunch today. Oklahoma City defenders couldn't really handle him. He's been rebounding like crazy too. He's been really good on the glass. He's doing a lot of good things. And yet, I don't know of a Knicks fan who feels like this is a guy who could play a very big role on a really good team with all the things that are required at both ends of a player and the consistency that is required of someone, especially a non-center in terms of a certain modicum of shooting that you need to be able to just keep defenses honest on a regular basis. It's shooting's come around a little bit, but it's just, I don't have enough confidence in that. I don't have enough confidence in any of the other stuff. Okay.
There's one more thing I just want to add in terms of player who's on detention, who I agree I don't feel comfortable putting in detention, in Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
I feel as though if Tibbs is still here through, December, January, February, up until the deadline, you if you're the front office, you can move Rose, but you probably won't. If you remove Tibbs, you have the flexibility to then move Rose for something. What Rose is worth? Not a ton, but here's the difference. Know. Well, no, I agree with you, but where I'm going with this is if you knew Derrick Rose wasn't going to come back next season because they have a team option, would you rather let him go at the, and he can sign wherever he wants to? Or would you try to use another team and be like, hey, team over the cap in luxury tax territory? What if we sent you someone who can be a guard off the bench and you lose your salary that you'd have where you're pressed up against in a different spot? Because you can non-guarantee Rose and then bring him back for cheaper. You have his bird rights. You could do all that. That's the philosophy I'm trying to, again, I'm cheating because I'm going a little ahead of myself in terms of the next couple of months. But that to me is where Rose really has the appeal. It's getting another team out of a financial sticky situation.
The way Rose has looked defensively this year, there's been enough of a drop off there when coupled with, because Derrick Rose, the 2 years he's been here, he's been instant offense. Yes. He comes in and you're like, whenever he gets ahead of steam, it's like, okay, that's going to be 2, or at the very least, it's going to be a good shot, or it's going to be a pat. He's been so automatic. I think it's a little bit early. I want to see where he's at in 10 or 20 or 30 games before I'm like, this is the end. But, he's been through a lot of injuries, a lot of surgeries, the whole thing. He's 34 years old. I mean, I don't know.
I'm wearing a Derrick Rose t-shirt right now. So clearly I want him to be the best version of himself. It's just, but we'll have plenty of time to get to that conversation.
Yeah, we'll get there. Okay. Predictions presented by our friends at WynnBET. Download the WynnBET app or visit www.wynnbet.com. That is www.wynnbet.com to start winning. Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100, win $100. Download Bet Win. I would bet a lot of overs in the 4 games we have ahead. Oh my goodness. As I would also probably take some money lines. Not for the Knicks. Spoiler alert. Okay, Jeremy, you won last week. I hate you. You're now 3-0 on the year, right?
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Not giving me a chance to get up off the mat. You're kicking a good man when he's down. It's very unfortunate. Tuesday at Utah, Wednesday at Denver, Friday at Golden State, Sunday at Phoenix.
You know I'm going to put you in the most unenviable position possible, right? I want you to know that.
So when you say that,
yes,
it makes me think that you're going to go 1-3.
Yes. If you want to take 2-2, then be my guest.
Oh my God. To me, you're giving me a gift.
Well, see, I don't really know if I am. And listen, if you win this week, then so be it. Because the Knicks, as bad as it felt like they were last year, they won at Golden State. Utah's in first place. They're obviously, how long they keep this up, I don't really know. Denver, they haven't won there since 2006. Phoenix, they lost to the Magic. So again, I think there's certainly an opportunity for you to take 2-2 and be successful with it. I can't be that optimistic. Based on everything we've talked about and everything I'm seeing right now, I have to roll with 1-3.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong, then it was a decent week and Tibbs lives to keep fighting for another game.
Jeremy, you think you're too optimistic. You think you're not being optimistic enough. Wait till you hear what Jon's about to say.
Not only am I running to the bank with 0-4, I think that there is a chance that they lose these 4 games by a total of upwards of 100 points.
Listen, it's definitely possible. I just feel like they can win one of the 4 very close by the skin of their teeth. And if they don't, and they're 0-4, then we're talking more about Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, and we're just having different conversations. Because it's amazing how much that one game also can feel like a difference in terms of how this is going, which shouldn't be the case, but whatever.
This team, other than Jalen Brunson doing really amazing shit, this team has not impressed me. This team has not impressed me once all season. The Minnesota game was nice. Like Julius drained a bunch of threes. That was playing. Talk about dead man walking. That was playing a team that was dead man walking, but
they crushed them. They did.
They crushed them, and they deserve credit for that. They stomped on their necks on a road game. The whole thing. I think they're going to get crushed. I think they're going to get absolutely crushed this week.
In traditional fashion, they'll lose the first 3, and it'll come down to the final game of the week for us to once again determine which one of us is accurate here.
No, it's going to be
as funny. It's been every single week.
What's going to be funny is when they win Tuesday and the week's over. That's what's going to be funny. They go into Utah, and Utah suddenly plays like the team that we all thought they would be before the season.
Yeah. I mean, look, we just buried Tom Thibodeau. If there were ever a time for the team to come out and show everybody that, like, hey, we still want to play for this coach, we still believe in this coach. They're the 27th ranked defense in the league over these 7 games. The Knicks are, and it's not like they've played a bunch of world beaters on offense, other than Boston, who's the best offense in the league. And they are going into Utah, and Utah is. Anybody want to guess what Utah is ranked offensively?
Well, I can tell you it's better than the Oklahoma City Thunder, who entered today 26th in offensive rating. So
the I know Jazz the answer, so don't ask me.
Well, tell our friends at home what ranked offense. Actually, can we just go through the offenses that they're playing this week?
Yeah, the Utah's the 2nd ranked offense. Denver is the 3rd ranked offense in the league. Phoenix is the 6th ranked offense in the league, and Golden State is the worst. They're the 14th ranked offense in the league. And their offense is a little deceptive because their bench is like the worst 5-man unit with the significant number of minutes, or one of the worst 5-man unit bench lineups in the league. Their starting unit is the number 1 lineup in the NBA, and partly is because Steph Curry is having the best season of his career,
potentially.
One could argue. So yeah, that's what the Knicks will have to contend with this year.
The Suns just lost by 17 to the Magic, who did not have Paolo Banchero. So I'm just saying,
Magic are feisty.
They are feisty, but then they also lost to the Sixers. I mean, like,
I love how you're talking a win into existence, Jeremy. I was actually leaning with John that this could be my bigger prediction for all of this is that this would not be the first time we're doing a pod about this is the end of Tom Thibodeau. This is writing starting to look on the wall. And this West Coast trip was always, I think, on everybody's calendar as like, okay, they go on this West Coast trip. They come back. They're still playing competitive teams. Like, John, you highlighted the Dallas, Cleveland, Atlanta stretch at home. And this is where Sean said it that Monday after the Cavs and the Mavs, where it's Luka on Sunday, Luka on Saturday, Donovan Mitchell on Saturday. There's a chance the Knicks are 8-16. That's a time that James Dolan is like, this can't be the product that we're having our home court fans see every Sunday. This coach has to go.
At the very least, the Cavs just lost to the Wolves, so the Wolves got off the schneid. They did not have to play against Donovan Mitchell. They only had to play against Darius Garland, taken fifth in the 2019 NBA draft. Darius Garland, 51 points.
Jeez. Okay. Wow.
Cleveland. I think he played in the fourth quarter too. Pretty sure.
Two things. Number one, December 4th, that Cavs game, ironically, right around the time where Thibodeau was fired, which is December 6th. So circle that week on your calendar in terms of Knicks lore. But the other thing is like we're talking about this stretch of games. And Andrew, I'd love for you to elaborate on this for a moment. I almost said David Thibodeau. I don't see Tom Thibodeau getting Willie Randolphed. Would you like to explain to those who don't know about what getting Willie Randolphed means?
I vaguely know what that means.
So back when I watched baseball, right? In 2008, I'll add the smallest bit of backstory. So this is a reference to the New York Mets from the mid 2000s. They hired Yankee great and honestly former Met great too, Willie Randolph, to be their manager. They showed improvement in 2005, won the division and were one of the best teams in baseball in 2006, but lost in the NLCS. So they were one win away from the World Series. The next year had a 7-game lead with 17 games to play and went 4-13 and lost the division to the Phillies. And he still didn't get fired, but entered 2008 on the hot seat. I add that context because the Mets got off to a mediocre start. They were a 500 team for 2 months. And the chatter around the team was that like any minute now he could get fired. And there was one weekend. So it was Memorial Day weekend. The Mets had lost their 8th straight game. They didn't fire him. Couple games go by, they like split a series, didn't fire him. They play a weekend series that it's like they're coaching, like they're playing for his job. They win 2 out of 3. All right, still haven't fired him. They go on a West Coast trip to Anaheim. They win the first game. It's on the West Coast, so the game starts at 10 p.m. our time, finishes at 1 a.m. They win it, so they've now won 3 out of 4. They're winning games for Julius Randle. Wow, for Willie Randolph. And it's like 1:30 in the morning. And this is really pre-Twitter, pre-everything. And they fire Willie Randolph in the middle of the night. And nobody found out about it until they woke up the next morning. And we're like, wait a minute. When I went to bed, the Mets won. Like, that's the last thing I remember. So that is what the Mets did to Willie Randolph. It's looked at as one of the worst coach firings in sports history, let alone New York sports history, which is why Jeremy used his name as a verb. Don't get Willie Randolph. I also don't see them doing that to Tibbs. I think this would be it'll hit a rock bottom and then it'll be a clear time to move. I don't think that they'll like give him a chance to get like a couple wins. And then it's like, actually, we do fire you.
You've inspired an interesting thought though, which is Willie Randolph was fired after a win. The first head coach fired this season was Steve Nash, who it wasn't so much surprising he was on the hot seat, but he was fired after a win. It's very possible that, again, who knows, but if Tom Thibodeau is fired, have to wonder, is it like, hey, you had a win, good memories, by the way. Like maybe it doesn't have to be all these losses that pile up, right? Like it doesn't have to, who knows? It's an interesting thought where it's like, hey, it happens. At least you got your win. Lasting memories. Thanks for them. We appreciate it, but it's just not a good time anymore. We don't see the fit. But again, hey, got to win. Thanks for the win. And your money, the check still clears. You're good. Don't worry.
Jeremy, the unfortunate comp that doesn't work there is so much else was going on with the Brooklyn Nets that led to 100%. Steve Nash getting fired.
It's specifically the like, hey, you won. Congrats.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, here's a pink slip.
Well, I mean, listen, if they end up beating Donovan Mitchell on December 4th and then they fire Tibbs that night, I mean, I won't complain. I'll be like, oh, wow, they beat Mitchell back at the Garden and then they moved on. And so what a way to go out, Tom. You know, you beat Donovan Mitchell.
I will just say, despite everything I've said on the show today, my suspicion is that things will get worse before they get better after they fire Tibbs. And I am not of the belief that firing Tibbs will solve the problems, even though, as I made very clear today, I think he is not helping them at the moment for several reasons. That's it. That's all I got. Andrew, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jeremy Cohen, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
And everybody out there, thank you for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you dig it, don't forget, leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review. Of course, subscribe. And we will be back with you with another episode that I am recording tomorrow and will drop on Tuesday. Yes, that is what is happening. And then all of our usual post games this week, even though they will be late because they're on the West Coast. So what
pre and post game.
Pre and post, late post.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have it all for you. Till then, take care. Be well. Peace out.